Joining me today by phone from Toronto, Ontario is well-known freelance illustrator Sami. From a young age, Sami was recognized for his incredible talent for illustration, and having worked as a freelance illustrator full-time for over 30 years, he continues to create fantastic work in the form of editorial cartoons, illustrations for children's books, and commissions for portraits and landscapes. Hi, it's great to have you here, Sami.
Hi, how are you?
Okay, so in your own words, what do you do for a living? What kind of artwork do you create? And what are some examples of projects you've worked on?
Well, like you said, I'm a freelancing artist, and I quite often do books for children, illustrating them, and now and then I do political cartoons as well, although I don't follow the politics up day by day. I usually get an editor sending me editorial story that I will illustrate, and so on. That's mostly what I do, and my own projects, which include art exhibitions. They're mostly fine art, my own projects. But the freelancing work lets me earn enough money to do my fine art, if you know what I mean. Well, I was born in Finland. I immigrated to Canada as a young man. After I had been at sea, I worked as a marine sailor for a merchant ships, and I got to like the international scene. So I left Finland and I immigrated to Canada. And I knew that after I quit sailing, I would fall back on my art and become an artist. Which wasn't all that easy, of course, because it took a while to get started here. But that's what I did. And of course, in Finland, the style there was quite different. If you try and enter the art world or to work as an illustrator, they would first ask, what sort of schools have you been to and where you're coming from, and never even looking at your portfolio. Here, of course, it was the other way around. They couldn't care less what schools you've been attending. They wanted to see your portfolio first of all. And they usually didn't have a job, but they would say, well, put your table into that corner and chair. You can work there 2 weeks without pay, and if we like you, you have a job. And I really like that idea.
But you did get an arts education in Finland?
Yes, in my high school you could choose either languages, maths or arts, and I picked the art line, if you like. That was teaching you more art than anything else. There were 3 different areas like that. And when I came to Canada, I studied a little bit of art in the evenings, just to sort of get tuned into the Canadian scene, so to say, and I use mostly acrylics, depending if it's children's book illustration, cartoons or something like that. That would have to be drying fairly quickly. I prefer acrylics, and but I have done some work in oils as well. If you want to push and pull the paints around, so that you have complete control over when you want to stop the work. The only problem with that is with oils that it takes a while to dry. For fast work, acrylics is better. Mind you, it has one drawback. If you want to work slowly with acrylics, the paint actually can dry up on your brush before you have finished your stroke. That will never happen with oils, so that's why I have a lot more control. You see, when I became an artist, I started as an illustrator, and I still illustrate. The difference between fine art and illustrations is there's a fair difference. Fine art is something that you most likely do for yourself on your own, like your own project towards a next exhibition. And with freelance art, cartoons and books, there you are following certain guidelines, like with children's books. It's a story, and with political cartoons, it's another editorial story. They pay quite well, and that money I have often channeled to my fine art, buying more paints, rolls of canvases, and then I paint towards my next exhibition my own ideas that are mostly invented in my head with my imagination.
So at the age of 6, you won a national art competition for children in your native country of Finland. What impact did the sudden large-scale recognition of your talent have on you at the time?
When I won it, I knew I could paint and draw quite well, and from that time on, even earlier than that, I painted and drew quite a lot more than average kid at that age would. And that continued. I continued that till the age of 15, and then I quit because I became a sailor. And I never did any art for another 6 years. Never touched any brushes or pens, and I kept that almost as a secret while I was sailing from my cabin mates. Nobody knew that I actually was an artist, and I always thought that if I get tired or fed up with sailing, I will fall back on my art just like that, which I did, although it wasn't quite as simple as that. Once in New York, we were with a cabin mate. We were in a large restaurant that had it was a huge hall, and they had a lot of interesting cartoons of faces of probably sports figures and politicians, and I was kind of mesmerized. And when I came back to my boat, I secretly drew up some paper and pens, and I just tested myself, and I wanted to see if I still had it, and I was very pleased what came up, and so I sort of proved myself that I still had it, and if I did quit sailing, I would just fall into the art.
How present is the influence of your childhood on the work you create today?
So my father was very creative, and my mother was a bit of a musician. She played a lot of piano, but I've always worked with my imagination. You know, like I was a bit of a catalyst in our group of kids. I used to come up with some ideas, and we used to do that. You know. But I don't know how that would come up in my art today, except that I take a great joy in illustrating for children. When I have a story, the more I can work with my mind and imagination, the freer and better I feel myself. You know, it's something I can just draw endlessly, ideas and whimsical things that don't really exist maybe, but now they do exist because I've done it. You know, I don't think, I wouldn't want to think of myself as childish, but I would always like to stay childlike, you know, because that's full of curiosity, and your imagination is very vivid. So I would hate to let that go, like if it was just painting some sort of commission works like portraits that are mostly fairly realistic. I would prefer do them both, one after the other, and that's how you appreciate the other, because the huge difference in between a whimsical, childlike work and that compared to something very realistic, say a portrait of someone that they won't buy it unless it's better than a photograph for some reason. It has to be really alive. But when you do both of them, they help one another in a very fantastic way, because one shows the contrast. Like if you are completely tied into realism for a while, when you are then let go completely whimsical and wild, anything that comes to your mind, it adds to it somehow. It gets even more creative. And when you go back to the realism again, you really see the difference, and it at least for myself, it seems to help both ways, you know.
So, what influence did your Finnish heritage and your family's background, immigrating to Canada from Finland while you were still quite young, have on your work?
Oh, you know, blood is a lot thicker than water. I suppose shows a lot of the Finnish mentality, the humor comes up in my work sometimes. Certain things that happened in the upbringing and so on, but more than that, I think of myself as mid-Atlantic. I've seen a lot of countries besides Finland, and I actually didn't spend all that much time there. But there are certain things that the Finnishness comes out in my paintings. I've heard it now and then. Somebody takes a look at my painting in an exhibition and said, "I knew you were a Finn." I don't know what that meant or what they've seen in a painting, but I believe that. Yeah, it's something that it's very hard to put your finger on it, what it is, but it does show somehow.